I think
So
we're clear.
coming up, we've got Lyle Larue, stodgy academic.
Give him a hand, everyone.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, stodgy academic. That's a nickname that I gave myself. Compared to most stand-up comics I am, I guess that some of that stems from how I majored in history at the University of Iowa, but it's also a case of some things work for me and some don't, and I just have to point them out. It's like, yeah, if you're doing a history joke and you get the facts wrong, I'm going to be annoyed with you. I mean, it's insulting to me when somebody doesn't get their facts straight when I spent a lot of time studying that. And I'm also thinking of, I'm the type that will now say, "It's been done," when somebody tries certain jokes. So there we go. I think a pro wrestler once was the type that his shtick was to be in a graduation cap and gown, and they'd play Pomp and Circumstance when he'd go wrestle. So I don't think I'm quite to that point of doing that same thing, but you never know what might happen in the near future. Yes, it is the third comedy marathon that I've done, and I had to look at the YouTube video from the first time I did it in 2 years back, and then look at my notes from last year as well. And I said, oh, that means that I have to be consistent on certain things, like, oh, the Emerson Huff hoodie, have to wear that one. Except, even in my hometown, most people don't know who that is. I thought it was the name of a school. No, schools are named after famous people all the time, and not just presidents. He's a forgotten Western writer that was Teddy Roosevelt's friend. Wrote books that became movies, but in the silent era, so sadly they're forgotten because nobody does silent movies anymore. Charlie Chaplin was one of the few that actually was able to transition. So there we go. And I know that another thing that I realized I had done before was I talked about having a Canadian penny in my pocket, and it's like, all right, I'm not quite sure what had been happening lately with that one, where I picked one up in a cup at the post office when I go pick up my eBay and Amazon orders, and then it's like, oh, I already have that year because, yes, I am so nerdy that I collect Canadian pennies because they don't make them anymore, and they might be worth something someday because they're rare. And then I had meant to drop it in a donation box at a McDonald's for Ronald McDonald House, but I didn't. And it's like, it's almost like I had meant to have another one so I could talk about it again. Yeah, I'm the type that likes going to McDonald's for the Shamrock Shakes that they have around St. Patrick's Day. And they're good, but I ended up finding out something even better when I first went to get one. I'm a big Charlie Brown and Snoopy fan, and I found out that the Happy Meals would have Snoopy toys in them, and it's like, okay, I guess we know how this one is going to end. I will end up with Snoopy toys even if I have to buy Happy Meals. And it wasn't that big of a deal. Happy Meals are cheap, $3 plus tax, but I still felt weird doing it because I'm not a kid anymore. So I ordered 2 Happy Meals, and neither time did I get the one I wanted, which was the baseball player. There are 10 of them. So I said, all right. With the first one, I asked them what they had. They had the dancer. They just gave it to me. They probably didn't know or care what I wanted in particular. It's like, well, do you have the baseball player? No, we don't. All right, what do you got? And it's like, oh, the author. Yeah, I write a blog. That'll work for me. And then I didn't bother to quibble the second time. They gave me the astronaut. It's like, all right, I've been to the Space Center in Florida. It'd be nice to go to the one in Houston, too, because I have a writer friend down there. And I have an eBay account, so it's like, oh, I'll just order on eBay, even though that's more expensive than just having another Happy Meal. I mean, to some people, I probably look creepy ordering Happy Meals. But with my latest job, somebody said that they ordered kids' meals at Culver's, and it's like, oh, okay. Why? Because they're cheaper and less food? Well, he's even older than me. So there's more of a chance that they'll say hey, the creepy guy wants another kid's meal, and he doesn't have a kid with him. Yeah, I know how some people operate. That's always a possibility. But I have 4 Snoopy toys. I hate seeing things go to waste. One time I was going out to my car because I have to park on the street where I live in St. Paul, and then I noticed that there was just an abandoned Happy Meal, and there was a Snoopy toy in it that was the Masked Marvel from the motocross special that they did. It's like, well, yeah, I'm claiming it. I did not eat the food, though, because it was in the morning and it was afternoon and evening food. And it's like, yeah, I don't want to get sick from that. So I have my limits on what I claim that's abandoned. Well, I know another thing that I talk about is how I lived in suburban Chicago for almost 6 years before I moved to Minnesota 14 years ago. And I go back for an annual visit. And I know one joke I started off with when I moved here was finding out about St. Paul's gangster history, especially during the 1930s, the Great Depression. My favorite era to study that particular decade. And I would say, yeah, it might have been a gangster hideout that time, but I wasn't on the run from the law. I was just on the run from unemployment. I got laid off. I'm a pretty straight arrow. I mean, there are people in my family have been arrested. Number of times I've been arrested, 0. That's why I have to say to my dad, I guess when I talk to him again, where he can be naive and he'll just say positive things about everybody. And it's like, he still wants to talk about my ex-brother-in-law, how much he enjoyed watching baseball games with him. It's like, what? Because you like the same team and I don't? He actually said that to me, and I couldn't believe it. 2 things in particular. The last time I watched an Iowa Cubs baseball game with him in Des Moines, I have to drive 4 hours, and I have to listen to his shit, which is things like, he still wants to talk about getting divorced from mom. That was 30 years ago. Get over it. But on the way to the game, he would say things like, you should have married that girl that you were dating for over 2.5 years. Why? If you like her so much, you marry her. There were differences we couldn't overcome. And then the other thing was that he was disappointed that I'm not a Cubs fan, that I'm still a Cardinal fan, even though I confronted Mom. Yeah, I confronted both of you on the same weekend because neither one would shut up about the divorce. The thing with Dad is he kept getting a free pass because he gave me a love of baseball and history. But it's like, yeah, I'm tired of doing that, always warning you. And it's priceless what he ended up saying at the end of that baseball game. He said, what, the game's over? We've been gabbing this whole time. Yeah, I couldn't find a polite way to tell him to shut up and watch the game. I mean, I drove 4 hours. I mean, I wanted to get my money's worth. When I go to see Twins or Saints games around here, I'm fine with watching them by myself because I get more out of the game. People say they'd like to see a game with me, but then it just never happens. It's like, okay. There's nothing wrong with doing things by yourself. I mean, you don't need to have approval from anyone. If you want to do it, you just do it. Yeah, I'm a bachelor, but I guess there are worse things than being a bachelor. Yeah, I sometimes get back to Iowa, but it's not too often now. I really need a reason to. When it's a long drive, I have to do myself in the same weekend. But this past June, I went to my class reunion, and I didn't mind that it was one that had low attendance, where only like 10% of the class showed up. Some people don't show up for class reunions at all. They said there were scheduling conflicts, and it's like, well, it's more likely the people that I'd want to see would be there, and the people I wouldn't be there. So no complaints from me on that. But it was also a case of, I remember one classmate in particular, I'm trying to think of how I go about this story. I sucker punched a bull and he left me alone after that, and then this dude decided to become the replacement bully, and I was in denial that I had a replacement bully for a while, I think because we had a mutual friend. And I went to one class reunion, and there was one classmate in football team. I was equipment manager on the football team. He apologized for being a jerk to me. It's like, well, it didn't bother me any that he was a jerk, I just figured, oh, get on with my life. But with the dude that became the replacement bully, he never apologized, so I never forgave him. And he started doing some of the same stupid shit on Facebook that he was doing in person a long time ago. And it's like, no, I can't do this anymore. So what I have to say to and whenever I see him again at reunions or wherever is, go away, and I'll forgive you once you let me do the same things that you did to me when I was in school. I mean, he did things like wail on me until I confessed to masturbating. And it's like, everybody does that. It was a lose-lose situation. And he also decided to make a club that he was going to beat me with. And he said that if it was missing, that he'd make an even more destructive club. And then when I wanted to be in people's pictures at graduation, he pushed me away. And it's like, okay, I'll forgive you when you let me do all that. And it's like, yeah, that's not happening. So I think I'll just have to say, go away because you haven't changed. Some people would call that holding grudges, but it's like, yeah, I've seen that often enough. When you let somebody back in your life, when you think they've changed, all too often they haven't. I know that's been the subject of some episodes of sitcoms that I just can't watch. It's like, you're an idiot. What made you think they would change? Yes, my annual visits to suburban Chicago. I just had one last month, and I know it meant something to me that one of our MCs here is named Kyle, which is almost my name, because when I got the rental car, I said, oh, your name is Kyle. Do you know that pain of being called by the wrong name? Because I get called Kyle every so often. It's like, sometimes he gets called Lyle. It's like, okay. I quit going to a therapist because she would call me Kyle. And it's like, there's no excuse for that. You have all that paperwork in front of you that says my name is Lyle. And she had the nerve to call me condescending. And it's like, no, I think it's condescending. They can't get my name right. I don't put up with people anymore that just won't give me the proper respect, especially if I'm paying them money and putting forward a lot of time. That's why I quit volunteering. I was getting disrespected. Volunteering through my employer. But I really liked my time in suburban Chicago, and I was thrilled to have followed a karaoke show, because I do that a lot for stage time now, is karaoke. I mean, what am I in the mood for is what I ask myself, same as when I do stand-up. And there's always something that I'd like to sing. And I went to a karaoke bar to perform because I couldn't find an open mic, and I had somebody there who heard I was from Minnesota, and she kept calling me Minnesota, and then she would say, don't you know, in that Fargo movie accent. It's like, we don't all talk like that. Some people. Yeah, I only happened to see her that first night, thankfully not that second night, but, well, the second night wasn't all that much fun either, waiting to sing, because it was St. Patrick's night, and there was no place to sit. But you meet people weird people everywhere you go. She was probably drunk, but I get tired of that being an excuse for why people act certain ways. If that's the case, then don't be drunk. It was like a doctor that I had when I was young that said, if it hurts, then don't do that. Or Schwarzenegger as the Terminator, don't do that. Oh, the Canadian penny, I covered that. Internet dating, yeah. I still do that, but not that much because it sucks. In fact, when scheduled date got canceled in September saying she met someone else, I finally said fuck it with eHarmony. I changed it to anywhere in the world to see if my fortunes would change at all. And in some ways they have, because I got matched with a lady that's in Armenia, and we've been exchanging Skype messages for a while, and she's visiting friends near St. Louis right now, so it's like, I visit St. Louis annually. I guess maybe I should make it before you go back to Armenia. She's a college level instructor, and I've been told before, if I'm a stodgy academic, that the best type of lady for me to date is a teacher. So it's like, well, I guess it looks promising right now. Still have to meet her though. I know some would say I should try harder trying to meet people in person, but it's like, well, I've been turned down a lot, and I enjoy performing a lot more. It's given me a lot more than dating has so far. My work, yeah, I might as well cover that. I had a work spouse until I didn't, as Yogi Berra, the baseball player, would say, because I got laid off from my corporate job in October, and I'm kind of back at work now. I'm a test scorer, and I'm still surprised on where I can get comedy material, but I've gotten plenty from it. As Bill Cosby would say, kids say the darndest things, and they do in these tests that we have to score. 8th graders in Florida. Things like, how one of them loves his parents, but there's no way they're taking away his electronic devices. Wanna bet? You're in 8th grade. You probably didn't pay for those electronic devices. Your parents probably did. Takes a lot of nerve to say that they're not going to do that. I know I would have never gotten away with that. I would have gotten spanked and slapped silly by my parents. Yeah, I was from the generation that still got spanked. Mom was actually crazy enough to give names to the sticks, cartoon characters. Oh, thanks a lot, Mom. She would say, and if you run, I'll just spank you more once I catch up with you. And yet she wanted to talk about the things that my dad did, saying that they were worse. It's like, no, pretty much comparable. Oh, might as well cover Dad, yes, although I already did a little. The one I was going to do about my dad. Oh, yes. I didn't know my grandfather because he died when I was an infant, but I remember what he said one time. He liked hearing that I drank Greenbelt beer and would say shithole. And he would say, your grandfather would say that, your grandfather would drink that. Dad, those aren't unique things, especially in Minnesota. Greenbelt is a historically Minnesota beer. You should get out more often, Dad. I have a work neighbor. We don't talk that much because we don't want to get work done with the test scoring. But when I greeted him earlier today saying, Heidi ho, neighbor, it's like, oh, what? Now I sound like Wilson from that old sitcom Home Improvement. Why did I do that? I guess because I know it works. It got his attention. And it's fine to have lunch with him. That's about the only time we talk. But it's proof of how we're decidedly different people because we value things differently. To each their own. But what was I talking about recently? The events I wanted to go to, like going to see the Shrine Circus at the State Fairgrounds. You know what he talked about? The news of the world. If it bleeds, it leads. One of these is not like the other. I wish I was making that up. It would be too sad for me to always be reading about the tragic things happening in the world. I think that's why I'd much rather talk about going to the circus. I once worked with somebody that was always upset after reading the paper. Well, just like I said before, if that's the case, don't read the paper. I mean, we all have free will. We covered that one. Oh, I did a fish fry tour during Lent. I like having good food that I don't have to cook. And I went to a different place every Friday during Lent. And it included being in suburban Chicago where I went to the Des Plaines McDonald's, which is across the street from the First Ray Kroc McDonald's. That was a place where I met Hamburglar, something I did not do as a kid. And another thing I did in suburban Chicago, I didn't do it as a kid in Iowa, was go to the circus. Well, I guess better late than never. I don't know why my parents never took me to do either one. Deprived childhood. Yeah, I know sometimes people use that excuse for being a criminal. Yeah, I guess I could have too, either that or mentally ill. I wish I was making that up. Sometimes I thought I was mentally ill. Yeah, I just needed to get away from bad influences. I guess that explains why I'm in Minnesota and they're in Iowa. Fish fry tour. Yeah, I went to 3 different VFW halls, 1 American Legion hall, so there's 4. The McDonald's was 5. A Catholic church, and then a bar that was having bingo. And I'm not sure which one of those was my favorite, but I liked each one of them being a little bit different. And The bar was near the former Schmidt Brewery in St. Paul, and I said, then I've got to have Schmidt beer. It took longer to get my beer. I guess people don't order Schmidt that much anymore. Might come back into fashion. You just never know. It did with hams. Fish fry and test siren. Work spoons. Class reunion. I'm trying to think of the best stories that I have from doing karaoke. Well, I guess I have theme songs when I visit suburban Chicago. Just the song that I hear a lot while I'm there. Like the one this year was Halsey, Bad at Love. Yeah, I can relate. I'm bad at love. Except I can't relate to things like wanting to make her mine, but she fell in love with the thin white lines. But other song lyrics I know pretty well, like the one that I chose 2 years ago was Same Old Love by Selena Gomez. I'm so sick of that same old love. That shit, it tears me up. I'm so sick of that same old love. My body's had enough. Oh, same old love. I'm so sick of that same old love. Feels like I'm blown apart. I'm so sick of that same old love. The kind that breaks your heart. Yeah, I really like lady singers that can be passionate, and because passion works for me, and I guess when they get to relationships, it's easier to be passionate. Man, that's why I like it. I'm single, and I wish I wasn't, but it's hard to find the right one. Well, I guess that'll do it for me. As usual, I like doing this comedy marathon, so thank you for listening. You've all been great. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We got some challenges we can do.
Ah.